Hello, good morning and welcome to our daily blog at the moment. It's proving out to be quite daily here at New Forest Morphs. Jared's joining me today. We've just done a really thorough clean, done a complete water change, water bowl clean. So it's taken us a bit longer than usual, but we've had some lovely feedback from Kaz, who changes her water bowls every day. So thank you for the water quality comment, Kaz. Do appreciate it. And I think hygiene and cleanliness is key to snake breeding success and keeping success. So we're stepping up our game, Jared. We're making sure that we're cleaning more often on the water bowls, and we've also had some lovely feedback on the video that we did out yesterday on the troubleshooting any males that don't seem to be locking for us. And I think the one we featured yesterday was Bowser, and for us it was an interesting experiment. We took the sperm off Kylo and we put it on the back of his girl, which I think was Bowser's female was Peach's. Peach was it? Peach. And what did we find, Jared, when we actually went to the rub? What was the
They weren't locked.
They weren't locked, but we did notice a couple of interesting things. They tail to tail. So Bowser's tail to tailing, and he's done that on a couple of breeding pairs. He hasn't quite. We haven't seen a visual, but when they're tail to tailing, should we have a quick look and see if they're still tail to tailing and whether they've locked? Because we've left them together. So the other interesting thing, Jared, that you cleaned out their water bowl. What did you find in the water bowl, by the way?
What looked like the sperm we put on her back.
Yeah. So, I mean, they look like they're really intimate, aren't they? They're on top of each other. They're close and cozy. But the sperm, we found the bit of sperm that Jared put on her back ended up in the water bowl, which means that she wasn't having anything to do with that male. She wanted to get it completely clean off her. So I thought it was interesting. I know Rob at Raw Balls has said that he believes that the rhythm of the room is the most effective way of stimulating boys, and he thought that a lot of these tricks, in his opinion, aren't as effective as perhaps they're made out to be.
Placebos,
and I think he was talking about, what was it, he referred to frogs and other things going on. It was almost like a trip back down to Halloween where we're trying to wave some magic on them. But I think if we stick with the rhythm of the room, I think that's very effective and we know it works. I think it'd be interesting to see what happens. We won't give it up completely on some of these ideas, but I think we would like to experiment a bit more. Now, what actually happened with the other two pairs, Jared? What happened to Giovanni and the pin?
they locked.
Yeah. So Giovanni is locking, and
That was expected though, because they've locked twice now.
yeah, I think Rob was mentioning that one of the reasons why perhaps the dreamsicle pair is not locking is to do with maybe the female's preparation, and he was suggesting that we look at her under the ultrasound and actually see whether her follicles and whether she's sexually mature, because she may not be giving out the signals or hormones to him. She might need more time, and it might be that we are going too quickly for them as a couple. So it may well be that even though they're up to size, and even though they are in great condition, you still have to allow time to let it take its natural course. So thank you very much everyone for your feedback on that. Now the other thing we had was Wizzy. We put Wizzy to your girl Mo, and we've just realised that Wizzy was actually going into shed. So they were both in separate corners, they weren't cuddling, they weren't showing any desire to breed. So I think we made the mistake of putting in Wizzy when he was in shed, and it was my fault there. But just goes to show, they will sometimes lock in shed, Jared. I've actually had couples last year that locked in shed and actually shed out using each other. So you've gone in there and you've seen a shed, a lock, and a whole bunch of other things going on. So I don't think it's gospel to say that they won't lock in shed, because if the drive and desire to breed supersedes anything else, they will do it. But I don't think it's good practice, because I think the animal goes through double stress if it's in shed and it's going into a breeding rotation. You're doubling up the stress levels really, so it's always better for them to digest their food, shed out, give them 3 days to kind of digest their food and then introduce. Then I think then you're giving yourself a better chance of a lock. So we're learning a lot from our experiences, Jared. The other thing, the news that we've got today is any moment now we're going to get a knock on our door from Jared. You set it all up. Is it
the courier service?
There's a courier service coming to pick up a
DHL.
So?
DHL.
DHL will be coming any moment now, so we're going to do a swift video before we go back into the house. But Jared's prepared the two-headed snake. Now we've had confirmation from the Natural History Museum that they would like to take the snake under their wing, and we've donated it to them as a charitable donation. Jared has packaged it carefully, and you had to do special packaging because it's in a... We've frozen it, haven't we, Jared? So it will preserve the anatomy of the two-headed snake, and it's being donated for scientific development. And if the Natural History Museum wants to exhibit it after it's done its tests and things, then we'll be very pleased and very proud to be able to know that that animal's life is actually being used to further science, and it's also being used as a possible exhibit, so that children and families coming in and individuals who may want to see a two-headed snake, they may well see that this pied, two-headed pied, may well be featuring in their collection of exhibits. So we thank the Natural History Museum for liaising with us, and it's just lovely to know that we've got an outlet for any unusual stuff that we produce here, and it makes the whole process scientifically much more worthwhile. Obviously we'd rather it be a healthy unkinked snake, but it didn't turn out to be the case, so at least his sacrifice is going towards scientific analysis and education, which we're very pleased about. So let's just what I wanted to do is a couple of things. We've got two snakes that have shed out today. One of them is the Ultramel girl, and I'm just going to show you what she's looking like. So her name is Caramac, and come and have a look, Jared. There she is. Isn't she beautiful? And I've weighed her down. She's weighing in at 1458 grams. So she's borderline to go late in the season or the next year. And I just thought I'd show you her. She's looking very, very beautiful. And the other one that shed out today that looks really gorgeous is Bubbles, who is our Enchi Clown that has got a what do you call those special marks on it?
Oh, paradox.
A paradox. So I was going to show you Bubbles. Let's just take her out and have a look at her. Maybe I'll bring her out and you can see her under the main light. And I weighed her, Jared, and she's coming in at, guess what her weight is?
Same, about the same as the other one.
She's around 1420, I think.
That's the little paradox in there.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy.
No. And she's an Enchi Clown, isn't she?
Enchi Lesser Clown.
Is she an Enchi Lesser Clown?
Yeah.
Enchi Lesser Clown. So, some of our clown girls are starting to get to that point where they're not far off being able to come in to the breeding rotation. Now, we are going to keep a very close eye on those. We're going to see how they do. We'll probably check their follicles later in the week. So the next video that we'll be doing, Jared, when it comes to the collection will be, we've kind of covered the pieds, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to cover the clown projects. And I think we had 40 out of 160 of our snakes are linked to the pied gene, and I've worked out that we've also got about 35 clown projects, clowns for the clown projects we've got. Now a lot of them overlap because you've got clown pieds, so it's very interesting that our collection is heavily 20% pied, 20% clown, and I think we'll focus on those two for this week, and then we'll go through all the other genetics that we're trying to build, and maybe give a global vision and picture of what we're trying to achieve, because when you're doing project development and vision planning, it's important to have your backup females and your reliable backup males in the projects, but also you've got to look at the end vision of what you're trying to achieve over a 10 to 15 to 20 year period. So we plan long term. So you're building the building blocks. So you're building a clown pied, you'll be building an ultramel pied and ultramel clowns, and eventually once you've got your genes up to a certain level, you then take each of your separate projects and you then bring them together and create something incredible. And so the idea is that you build with the building blocks, but you're building almost like a pyramid of height where you're feeding those genes into each other, and if they're coming in as double hets or triple hets, the opportunity to actually bring those combos in to create the multiple ones. I mean, I'd love, for example, I'd like a super orange dream, a super enchi, highway, ultra pied clown would be like one of my top goals, which could take 20,
not much then, eh?
20 years to get there. Okay, probably 20 years to get there if I've got all the females backing up the males and you kind of stacking them and building them. So, you know, and I think, you know, if you set yourself realistic goals, but also you set yourself a long-term vision, when you're laying out your investment and buying these snakes in, you're looking at the overall picture of what you're trying to achieve, rather than saying, I'm only going to have this building block here and this building block here. You get to your mini projects and you think, hang on a minute, those two are not compatible. So you're looking at compatibility and artistic combining over the long term. Right, okay, let's do a big shout out. Now I wanted to introduce two brothers, and we're a father and son ball python channel, but I've discovered over the last 6 months a beautiful channel called the GenZ Reptiles, and it's run by two brothers I think they're either in Canada, I think, Jared. I believe
they probably go by GenZ.
GenZ, is it GenZ? Sorry, it's me. Just GenZ is GenZ Reptiles, and their names are Jace and Josh. Let's go and have a quick look at their channel. Give them a big shout out, and they've got some amazing projects. They went big time into Wookiee. They love their Wookiee gene, Jared. They love their clowns. They love their pieds, and they love their redhead exantic. So I've been following them very carefully. So you can see what we've got here, Jared. This is their logo, which I think is very lovely. And they're on YouTube, Instagram and TikTok. So that's really quite helpful. Lovely layout and logo. And I like the fact that one of the ideas I got for the video that we did this week was that he's put out a males won't lock video. And I thought that's a really interesting one because I think a lot of us might be experiencing that. So it's very relevant. They've got 1.2k subscribers. They've only been going about a year or so. But they're producing massive clutches. They're doing something right. They're getting like 10, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 egg clutches, and they're getting very few slugs. And they are showing us how, for new breeders coming in, they're showing us how it's done really. And I think I'm learning a lot from just watching their husbandry, watching their techniques, watching their mixes. So let's have a quick look at one of the videos. At least
hey, what's up everybody, it's Jace here from GenZ Reptiles, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're already about a month into our breeding season. If you're anything like us, we're having some snakes that are hesitant to start breeding, so we're going to go over some tips and tricks that we use to get our snakes into the mood. With that being said, here's tip number 1. So our first tip is to pair during a precipitation event. That's rain or snow. For us, we have a lot of success with locks during that time. And I think the reason for this is that the barometric pressure changes, which mimics the rainy season back in Africa. So the rainy season or the cool season is what starts to stimulate the ball python's breeding. And I believe...
So there you go. So that was just a quick sample of the kind of content they're putting out. So not only are they updating us with their projects, it's an educational and development channel, which I really appreciate because we can learn off each other. So I think this is why we network, this is why we support each other on the channel, because we learn a lot from each other. And I think it's really important to be an open-minded and take on board new ideas, new concepts. Like we're taking on board for the first time because of this channel the opportunity to try a technique which is using the sperm technique. Now it may or may not work for us, but I think we'll try it and we'll just report back and see how it goes, and that's the only thing we can do. I'm a firm believer in experimentation and development. So let's go back and see what else we've got here. So the other thing that I wanted to discuss today was let's have a little look. Yes, we were going to look at the fasting issue. Is fasting good for snakes, Jared? What's your thoughts on that?
I think to a degree probably yes.
Okay.
I don't think it's good to fast too much because it's starving the snakes, but
yeah,
I think every now and again it's good for them to go without food for a bit to clear out their systems and to let their bodies not work as hard for a little bit of time.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing in this particular hobby, I think, as a new breeder coming in, is that when you have an animal that fasts, is trying to work out why it's fasting. Now, what are the various factors, Jared, that could cause an animal to fast? Let's just think about
that. As in to go off food?
Yeah.
So if their temperatures are wrong and they're not comfortable in their home.
So should we call that wrong husbandry?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you've got an animal that's on fast, there could be reasons for that, and it could be that the husbandry is not right, and if they're uncomfortable they may go off food. So that's one point. Okay, any others?
They could be sick, so they might have an RI, or they might have mites, or they might have some problem.
RI, mites, some illness could be another reason. So they
could have worms or something.
Worms. So an animal might fast, or a reptile may fast if it's got wrong temps, wrong husbandry. It could have the wrong humidity, because we found as we've increased the humidity, the feeding rates and the feeding strikes are improving. In fact, we're so happy we're keeping it between 55 and 60 now, and we're finding it's also comfortable for us to work in, because when we go beyond 60, Jared and I are coming out like sweating buckets, and you've got to get that balance right between you feeling comfortable as well as the snakes. And I think what we've decided is to keep the ambient humidity between 55 and 60, and then we're spraying the rubs to increase the individual rubs up by another 5 or 10% if we need to when it comes to shedding, breeding. And so I think that's a good approach to take. But if your animal's not eating, it could be to do with husbandry. So go through all the checklists, and we've got lots of care videos. Go and have a look at our care videos on temperature, on humidity. We've put a lot out there, and just work through that.
It could also be due to stress. So they could be stressed out, whether that's they're in a busy room in the house and people are constantly walking by them, scaring them, or overhandling. If people hold their snakes too much, the snakes might decide to go off food because they're stressed out. There's loads of different things that could be causing them to go off food.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. And the remedies, of course, is that since we built the facility, and you'll notice that no one disturbs this facility. There's no family coming in and out. It's just Jared and I and Emily and Adam and Mandy when they come in and help me. And it's lovely because we know that we check on them at least twice a day, don't we, Jared? And we know that once we come in, do the clean, switch the lights off, make sure that the facility is all fine-tuned and running well, check temps, check humidity. We can leave our snakes knowing they're in a clean space, and then I come in the afternoon or evening, just do some spot checking, make sure everything's happy, make sure all the parameters are fine. Jared's got technology that tells him if there's a problem, and feeds to your phone as well, so you can control it and monitor it while you're working or while you're away from the facility. And I think all these practices are good. The reality is that most breeders are going to be in their home, and they're going to have probably children running around, and there's going to be noise, and that can cause problems. But there are things that you can do in your home. I mean, I use lots of techniques. I mean, when we had the snakes in the home, we used to use covers.
Blanket.
Sorry?
You had a blanket, didn't you?
I had a blanket or towel going over the rub system to give them the privacy they needed, so that if children or family were going in and out of the bathroom, switching on lights and the landing or whatever, the snakes weren't being impacted by it because they had a degree of shielding and protection. So there's things that you can do if you don't have a purpose-built facility to make your snakes feel comfortable. One of the most important things is to give them a hide. Now a lot of people don't put hides in their rubs because they think that if you've got a closed rub, we've got open rubs that we can see into, and we do that for a reason, so we can inspect our snakes without disturbing them. But most people actually have grey rubs that you can't see into them, so you have to keep pulling the drawers out to inspect your snakes. But that said, if they're a decent size, you don't necessarily need a hide, because the hide is actually the rub. But there are some really, really important times and exceptions to the rule where we do find that since we've been everyone virtually has now a hide, I've noticed they're a lot happier and they're a lot more content, and they're not being disturbed when we come in and switch the lights on. So I think that's another good thing to de-stress them as well. And also, as I said earlier, not to put 3 or 4 things on them at once. So if they've eaten, you rest them, don't handle them, you don't breed them. If you end up stacking stress levels by feeding, breeding and handling all at the same time, it's a recipe for disaster. And if you get your humidity wrong or you get your temps wrong, you're going to have a problem. So the key is really to be respectful and not to put your snakes under too much pressure. So that's a really good one, Jared. Any other reasons why a snake may fast, Jared, that you can think of?
Especially with males, when breeding season comes along, they have one thing on their mind, and that's not food.
So their sex drive. Now, Rob's messaged me yesterday, I think it was, on do males go off food during the breeding season? And it's interesting because from his analysis, he thinks that the community, and I think you might be right here, I think sometimes we convince ourselves that we've got to prepare for a male to go off food when they breed, and he doesn't agree with that. He thinks that
sometimes they do.
I know Rob had one himself that went off and he had to take it into the house and sort it, so it does happen. But what he's saying is that he thinks that the majority of cases it is down to the way in which we are. It could be husbandry, it could be a whole bunch of other issues that are affecting it. He doesn't think that you should actually associate the breeding season with males going off food. He thinks it's something that happens, but it could be other factors, not necessarily the breeding. The breeding could elevate the stress levels, which could then affect them. But I think really he's saying that good husbandry and careful planning and some other things that I think are important means that we shouldn't expect our males to go off food. I was talking about why I wanted to build up Bowser, because I thought if he goes off food it'll give him a cushion. Or maybe if we learn how to introduce the males in such a way that they don't go off food, that they regularly feed, and we don't overbreed them, like breasting them regularly and giving them a meal, keeps them topped up and not putting them under too much stress, and therefore that might be one of the factors. But there's a whole bunch of things there. So I think during the breeding season a lot of breeders do experience males going off food, but I don't think it's necessarily solely because they're breeding. I think it's a combination of other factors, but the breeding will increase the stress levels that could lead to that. So I think it's a valid point, but I think we sometimes perhaps overplay it and over rely on that as the reason why our males are going off, and it may not necessarily be the case. I think Rob's got a very successful breeding rotation where he says most of his males feed all the way through.
That's ideal, yeah.
He's not concerned. So he's got like a lot of years of experience. For the newcomers coming in who are learning, we are going to experience males going off food, and it can pull your hair out and it makes you frustrated. But we've got to be humble enough to learn from those that have twigged their systems, that got their males feeding during breeding, and we've got to learn the art of doing that. So that's something we've got to learn, but it is doable because we've got breeders around us that are doing it, with the exception of 1 or 2 males perhaps going off. And on the whole, Jared, Bowser's about the only boy that we've got at the moment that hasn't locked, and Mowgli. There's 2 out of maybe 35 boys that we've got.
Yeah.
So if you put that in perspective, let's say we've got 3 boys out of 30, that's 10% of our breeding males that switch off food. 90% of our boys feed while they breed. So I think that's a massive tick, and sometimes we emphasise the problem snake or the issue, but put it into perspective. Okay, any other reasons why an animal will go off food, Jared?
If you give them the wrong food item, so if you've bought them from someone and that person's been feeding them live, for instance.
Yeah.
In the UK, we feed frozen forward. Majority.
It's not legal to feed live in the UK.
No.
I mean, I know that there probably are 1 or 2 people that do it.
But they might not be used to that frozen. Like if you buy them from Europe or America,
yeah, where
they've been fed on live, they might not be used to frozen forward, and it might take them a bit of time to transfer over.
I mean, we've never ever fed any of our snakes any live food. I have been tempted because we've had a couple of snakes that really worried me, and we've just battled on with the frozen, and we've switched it up, and we've managed to get them feeding on frozen. But
sometimes it's a waiting game, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just got to keep trying.
Yeah, it's a really hard dilemma, and I think breeders are under that dilemma, I think, when you know that if you put in live mouse on a hatchling that's not eating, you might have some success. But I think what we found with our hatchlings is we assist feed them on frozen, and they eventually transfer to frozen. And we had one girl that was fed live mice from Europe that we bought, and she didn't transfer across at all well. But now she's taking frozen thawed Maltese, and she's taken I think 2 or 3 in the trot now, so we're a little bit happier that she's now translating. But she's only 350 grams, she should be 1,000 by now. But
which has been a stress bucket.
Yeah, that's been a stress bucket for us, but we've resisted the temptation to go live, and and we're trying to stay within the frozen thawed way of doing things. Any other reasons? I mean, obviously girls can go off food as well during the breeding season, Jared.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the main reason for that is follicle growth.
Well,
yeah, if their follicles are so big, they haven't got room to pass the food.
After they've got after they've ovulated and everything, they go off food.
Yeah, so if your girls go off food and they start fasting, that's part of the normal.
If they go off food before, then it's not ideal though, because they need to be pounding that food.
Exactly. So hopefully there's a little bit of food for thought there.
Sometimes they just go off because they just want to go off. Like we've had some snakes that have decided not to eat their food.
Yeah.
Temps have been fine, humidity's fine, got everything they could possibly need, and they just don't eat. And after a couple of weeks, they decide to eat their food.
And some girls, they say they hit this wall, which is 1,000 gram wall, or can be between 800 and 1,200. We've only had a couple of snakes that have done that. Most of our new hatchlings have just cruised through, haven't they, Jared? I mean,
they just keep going.
If you look at, we just cleaned out, Mango. It's like, she's absolutely massive, isn't she? She's 2.4 kilograms, and she never went through any. She was smashed through. There was no wall for her. She was
only what 300 grams when we got her last year.
Yeah, I mean
she
she's just
once a week, and she just gains weight.
But I think she's genetically a big snake, and I think some snakes are going to be genetically big. Others. Just to finish, I'm going to give a little shout out to Dave Carpenter, who sent me a lovely video, Jared. I'm not going to show you the whole video, but I'm just going to recommend it to our viewers if you want to improve. I was talking about how fasting helps me.
Yeah.
But he sent a lovely video, and I'll see if I can find it. And it's a lovely video from the same doctor that he is using on other things, and he talks about the benefits of fasting and
for humans.
Now, I think there's a lot of, let's see if I can find the, let's see if I can find it. Let's have a look. Here we go. Dr. Berg was the one, I think. And it's, let's see if I can find his video. What really happens when we fast, Jared, is the one. Let's see if we can just skip these surveys. But this is the one that I want to
Let's talk about what happens on the inside of your body when you're fasting.
Have a quick look, Jared.
So over here we have a start of a fast, and we go 24 hours, 48, and 72. So there's a lot of really magical things that happen when you fast. Our bodies have developed over a long period of time and have adapted to starvation many, many times. So we have all these unique proteins that get expressed or turned on that have to do with your brain doing better, the different parts of your body surviving better. Our bodies have not adapted to the frequency of eating like we do now, like every 3 hours. So right around 12 hours, we get this spike in growth hormone. Growth hormone is the anti-aging hormone. It's the main fat-burning hormone. It's the hormone involved with healing joints, and it's involved with protein synthesis or making different new proteins. Some people take growth hormone, they get injected. I don't recommend it, but they take it to help heal certain parts of your body. But guess what? Fasting will trigger it automatically. So just by the fact that you're fasting, you can increase growth hormone. And of course, exercise will also increase growth hormone as well. So it starts about 12 hours and it increases as you go on and on. Now, at about 18 hours, you start developing something called autophagy. Autophagy is an interesting thing that happens with your body where you start recycling old, damaged proteins and microbes as well. One type of protein would be the advanced glycated end products, which basically when you combine glucose with a protein, it becomes very sticky. So let's say you're on a high carbohydrate diet, and that sugar combines with your own protein in your body, and that starts to glycate or just kind of destroy some of the proteins in your body, and then they don't function anymore, and they get sticky and they clog things up. Well, guess what? Your body will start cleaning all that up and turning these damaged proteins into new amino acids where your body can use them. Amyloid plaquing, which occurs in the brain and other parts of the body, is a type of protein that can be cleaned up with autophagy. So it's any type of cellular proteins that are not working anymore in your body. Autophagy will start cleaning that up and start to renew the tissue. And it starts around about 18 hours and it gets more and more and more as you start fasting. And in about 24 hours and a little bit longer, you start to really deplete this glycogen reserve, this storage supply of glucose in your liver. So the more that the liver is depleted with glycogen, the more you're going to be running on ketones as the alternative fuel. And if you have a fatty liver, for example, your body will start using that fat and turning that into ketones. So your body is finally able to start tapping into this stored energy, and you're running more and more on ketones, which is a superior fuel. And because you're running on ketones, ketones are an appetite suppressant. So your hunger goes away, cravings are gone. They're antioxidants, so you're building up your antioxidant reserve. They provide more oxygen, so your body is running on more oxygen, less CO2. It's more efficient. And because ketones are a much more efficient fuel than glucose, the thyroid does not have to work as hard. And you may find that your T3 is a little bit lower, but the thyroid stimulating hormone is normal. And all that means is your thyroid is adapting to this new type of fuel. Now, some other cool things.
There are some really cool things to learn, and when I got that, thank you Dave for sending that, because I've always believed in fasting from a spiritual perspective, but I've never really studied the science. All I've said on other videos is it makes me feel good. So if it's making us feel good, is one of the reasons why our snakes are fasting, that they understand their own anatomy and they need to rest. They need to use their fat reserves, they need to settle down their liver. And I think we pump our snakes with so much food, and just look at what we've been doing over just several months. You can see it's stacked high, and that was full of rats. And we recycle these, that's why we haven't thrown them away. But it's making me wonder whether we've perhaps put too much food into our animals, and now maybe it's time for them to fast and to rest, and we're going to perhaps moving across to a 10 or 2 week feeding ratio. Thank you for watching.